Hello and welcome to my presentation titled Subjugated Voices, providing a platform for participants and communities to share their stories as part of the evaluation of sport for development programmes. It is great to be a part of the Power at Play Digital Symposium organised by the Journal of Emerging Sport Studies. Indeed, the inaugural digital symposium for the journal. A big thank you to Andrew, Taylor and everyone else who has been involved in organising and contributing to the symposium. It is my intention during this presentation to give an overview of the issue of power dynamics and subjugation within the context of evidence in sport for development, particularly regarding giving a voice to participants, progressing then on to how the issue may be best tackled and alleviated within the context of my PhD working with Sunderland's Foundation of Light in the UK. So the sport for development evaluation context. Sport for development has become increasingly political and ideological, particularly for the UK in the last 30 years. This perhaps should come as no surprise due to the significant levels of exchequer and lottery funding which is given to sports organisations and projects. Moreover, given the increasing global focus on the sport for development field, the field has had to demonstrate accountability for its investment. It is within a neoliberal modernised environment that the monitoring and evaluation of sport for development finds itself in today. Indeed, according to Newman, the modernising and neoliberal agenda of the new Labour government of 1997 to 2010 led to the development of rational and scientific process of managerialism, the introduction of evidence-based policy, measurement, audit, and technologies of accountability. Adams and Harris claim that it is within this broad context of neoliberal derived modernisation, with the emphasis on evidence as the golden goose of validity, that the field of sport for development has been roundly criticised. But why has the field of sport for development been criticised? What is it about this neoliberal derived modernisation that has caused the field to be criticised? There is a plethora of literature relating to a lack of evidence discourse, critiquing the lack of rigorous, longitudinal and meaningful evidence within sport for development. See Adams and Harris, Coulter, Barry Houlihan and Tess Kay, for example. Rather, evidence is limited to quantitatively narrow-based key performance indicators or KPIs with focus on what is perceived to work rather than understanding why and how a particular intervention may or may not work. Indeed, it is the imposition of these KPIs which have depowered delivery agents whilst reaffirming the dominance of external stakeholders. It is here that a number of academics have sought to link the subjugation of practitioners in the evaluation process with the work of Michel Foucault, citing clear power hierarchies impacting the collection and publication of evidence for sport for development. The key actors involved within a sport for development project are policymakers, external evaluators including academics, practitioners and participants. Whilst we do not have time to explore the nuances of the Foucauldian approach in relation to these actors, within the existing literature, much has been made of the subjugation of practitioners within the monitoring and evaluation process, particularly in regard to development work in the Global South. However, there is very limited literature on the subjugation of participants. Therefore, the rest of this presentation, using a local case study of Sunderland's Foundation of Light, will highlight how a forthcoming evaluation seeks to empower participants of interventions in order to provide a more robust, deeper and nuanced evaluation. The Foundation of Light is the charity linked to but independent of League One Sunderland Association Football Club. Situated in the northeast of England, the Foundation of Light works with local communities in order to improve lives through the power of football. Recently, the Foundation of Light moved into its new £20 million Beacon of Light facility which houses staff offices, a multi-use sports hall, and various meeting, training and education rooms, not to be confused with being a sports or leisure centre, but much more than that. The Foundation of Light delivers 4 different types of programme intervention: informal and community education, education, skills, and sport and wellbeing. Some of the key demographics that the Foundation of Light work with in their catchment area: Sunderland is in the top 20% of most deprived authorities in England. Just under a quarter of children are living in what is considered as low-income families. Sunderland consistently performed below average on key health and educational metrics. It's got a high rate of white British people, and Sunderland is home to Nissan and other manufacturing companies, so jobs are very much centred around manual labour and production. So how can we provide a voice for local communities? Well, I believe Realist Evaluation can do that. Realist Evaluation is a method-neutral, theory-driven, retroductive approach which derives from the epistemological position of realism. Moving swiftly on from research philosophy, in essence, the focus of a realist evaluation is to understand how and why a programme works or does not work, not whether the programme is successful per se. In order to do this, realist evaluations seek to penetrate beneath the surface of observable inputs and outputs of a programme, which leads on to the development and refinement of programme theories. Central to programme theories is the identification and understanding of how mechanisms lead to particular outcomes. In order to explain this, different iterations of the formula first described by Pawson and Tilley are widely used, and that initial formula by Pawson and Tilley, you can see at the bottom of the slide, is mechanism plus context equals outcome. Mechanisms are crucial to a realist evaluation, so it is important to understand what a mechanism is and how to identify the many mechanisms at play within an evaluation. Mechanisms are made of 2 components, a resource and a participant reasoning in response, a resource and a reason. The mechanism then leads to an outcome. In other words, mechanisms are not the programme activity, but the response it triggers from stakeholders. Programmes often work through multiple mechanisms, so there are lots of mechanisms going on in a particular programme or intervention, and mechanisms are context dependent. The same resources will lead to different outcomes in different environments, as outcomes are dependent on participant context and reasoning. Dalkin et al. 2015 provide a useful diagram, which you can see on the slide, which builds on the work of Pawson and Tilley. The diagram does a good job in demonstrating the disaggregation of what a mechanism is in terms of resources and reasoning. This realist approach and appreciation for local contexts has great potential for improved evaluation across sport for development. Indeed, specifically for the topic of this presentation, realist evaluation places high value on the backgrounds and experiences of participants. For example, the contextual factors such as demographics, life experiences, and geography of young people in Sunderland are very different to the young people who are situated within the catchment area of similar football charity, the Cambridge United Community Trust. Comparing the 2 catchment areas, we know that Cambridge has overall better health, less children in low-income families, a better school attainment average, a higher rate of employment, and more diverse. We will now use the model provided by Dalkin et al. To explain a simple programme theory which demonstrates the significance of different contexts to the resulting outcomes. You can see that I have added a specific resource, context, reasoning and outcome to the model. The resource is the Beacon of Light facility, where a particular sport for development programme is taking place. The context for this example is geographic community X, a community which lives a stone's throw away from the beacon of light. The reasoning is that individuals from community X are more likely to attend the programme due to the locality and ease of accessing the location. And this then leads to the outcome of individuals participating in the particular sport for development programme, which will then allow for further outcomes to occur. However, if we change geographic context to community Y, which is situated an hour's walk from the beacon of light with poor transport links, then you will see that the reasoning and outcome changes. Individuals are now less likely to attend due to being unable to access the beacon of light, and therefore the resulting outcome is that individuals do not participate in the programme. This is a simple example. However, what it does demonstrate is that according to realist evaluation, we should not expect the same outcomes in different contexts, despite the same resources being used. Rather, it is imperative to take into account local and indeed individual contexts. This then gives greater scope for individualised and localised data to be collected from participants, enabling participants to share their stories and experiences, which can then form part of the overall evaluation. However, this does not mean that we cannot apply what is learned in Sunderland to an intervention in Cambridge. Indeed, middle range theory allows for the identification of generalisations which may be transferred from one context to another. It does not claim that because this worked in Sunderland this way, it must work the same in Cambridge. Rather, it suggests because this worked in Sunderland this way, it may have a similar effect in Cambridge. It acts as a starting point for an initial programme theory elsewhere before testing then refines it to a more localised programme theory. For example, going back to our programme theory regarding the impact of location, what we discover in Sunderland may contribute some understanding in how far prospective participants are willing to travel to engage with a programme elsewhere. Having spent some time outlining how realist evaluation assists in emancipating individual and local voices, it is worth acknowledging some of the challenges associated with deploying realist evaluation within the sport for development industry. Firstly, time consuming. Whilst this is true of many evaluation approaches, it is particularly so for realist evaluation, given the importance placed on understanding individual experiences. It is also a relatively new approach within sport. Realist evaluation is not widely used or understood within sport development. Realist evaluation has a stronger background in health. Therefore, for individuals like myself, it is a challenge to acquire buy-in from stakeholders and get the same buy-in compared to the health industry. Thirdly, making the findings accessible. Language and presentation of findings is imperative, and Shayla et al. 2019 draw reference to this, and myself and Kevin Harris provide an example of how this can happen within the sport development industry. And finally, are the dominant actors in the field interested? And how do we interest them? Do they value the work? Is there any point producing a realist evaluation if it cannot and does not have an impact at policy level? Therefore, it is important for practitioners and evaluators to understand how to engage with those policymakers higher up the food chain. Cairney 2016 notes that policymakers have limited ability to devote sufficient time to evidence, but crucially, they still make decisions. Therefore, policymakers are unlikely to be automatically receptive to new approaches to evidence. Indeed, as Cairney 2016 writes, scientists may provide important policy relevant information. We can replace scientists with practitioners or evaluators. Evaluators may provide important policy relevant information, but if they want to influence how that information is used, they need to know how the policy-making process works. Thus, the hard work for proponents of realist evaluation goes beyond carrying out the evaluation itself. So to conclude, why the realist approach? Well, realist evaluation has potential to lead to the emancipation of individual and local voices. There is a treasure trove of local and individualised data which is currently being neglected in evaluations of sport for development programmes. Secondly, realist evaluation can add value and understanding more broadly across the sport for development sector. While programme theories are designed with specific contexts in mind, tested and refined programme theories can contribute to middle range theories which can provide a good starting point for alternative contexts. And finally, realist evaluation is not without its challenges. Perhaps the most significant challenge is not the evaluation itself, rather how to engage the dominant actors of the policymakers who hold the power, direction and accepted approaches of sport for development. If we cannot convince the policymakers of the value of realist evaluations, then it is unlikely that realist evaluation will have the impact it has the potential to have in better understanding the impact of sport on individuals and local communities, indeed emancipating the experiences of those individuals and local communities. Thank you very much for listening. You will see that I've listed a number of key references on the slideshow there, and I'll include those in the description below, along with my contact details should you wish to contact me or engage with me on social media. All that I have left to say is thank you very much for watching, for listening. I hope it's been an insightful presentation, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the symposium, and thank you once again to the organisers of the symposium. Thank you very much.